gift of life and for leading us from our homes to this place. Lord, we commit this meeting into your able hands. We ask for the Spirit to guide us. We ask for the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding that whatever we are going to discuss, oh Lord, we shall understand it and shall give us the grace to participate, to practice those things for the betterment of our lives and our community. Lord, come and reign amidst us and let your name alone be glorified. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Amen.
Thank you very much. I'll now pass this mic around. Just tell us your name and the organization you're representing, just so we can know you. I think I'll start with you, Peter. You can stand, everyone. It's okay.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Majela Peter Guayaka. I work with Beniva, but on this particular day, I will be the facilitator for this.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Benson Ekwio Chen. I work with the Public Affairs Center Uganda, Soroti City. No, we are also now no longer from up country.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Skovia Namalwa. I work with ATC Women Network from Manafa District. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gloria Munyanda. I work with Enabling Talents Uganda.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ataila Olivia. I work with Youth Alliance Africa. Thank you.
A very good morning to you all. My name is Apio Monica Prudence. I'm representing Howard Foundation from Gulu City. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm Godfrey Chanwat from Hope and Peace for Humanity in Gulu City. Thank you.
Yes, good morning all. Geoffrey Dong is my name. I work for Gwechi Gulu. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tanazio Viamcha. I work with Chitara Civil Society Organizations Network, Kisoni, based in the Bunyoro region, particularly Kagadi district.
Good morning to us all. My name is Gloria Mugonsebwa Sarah, and I work for Bunyoro Albertine Petroleum Network on Environmental Conservation, based in Hoima City.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Faith Okaka-Uwizere, and I'm representing Center for Policy Analysis.
Good morning. My name is Emio Tim. I work for the Christian Democratic International Center. It's a party foundation based in Sweden.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Farida Chomhanji. I work with GIZ with the Governance and Civil Society Support Program.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Nathan Ebiro is my name. I work for Amuria District Development Agency in Amuria.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nyanga James Peter. I work for Vision Terudo in Eastern Uganda, Teso region. But I can't say Soroti City, as Benson said.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm called Osekenyi Santos. I work for Kids Uganda, that's Bukedia Kids, and as well as chairperson NGOs Bukedia District.
Good morning. I'm Amongin Rose. I work for College Women Development Organization.
Good morning. I'm Ahura Edwin Seferson, working with Bunyoro Union of Persons with Disabilities, BUPED, based in the Bunyoro sub-region, specifically Hoima City.
Very good morning to all of us. I am Sam Okiso, representing Humanity Forum Uganda, which is based in Kumi.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Pira Doris, representing Civic Space Institute, based in Kabale District.
A blessed morning to everyone. I'm called Irene Atimango, working for Haldren Foundation, Gulu City. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tumirwe Florence, working with Kigezi Women Involvement. Happy to be in this convening.
Hello, everyone. My name is Esther Tumsime. I am representing the Executive Director of the Niagara Forum. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Musinguzi for Chapter 4 Uganda. Happy to be here.
Good morning. My name is Ivan Chibuka. I work with the African Youth Development Link. Thank you.
Good morning to you all. I'm Dr. Tolik Charles Atia. I'm an Associate Director at CCG.
Good morning to you all. Sarah Birete, ED at CCG.
Thank you, but I saw two other gentlemen joining us. Could you please let us know who you are?
Thank you. My name is Okidi Christopher from Kampala.
Thank you very much to all of you. At least we now have a sense of who is in the house, and I'm glad we have some good regional representation. I think all parts of Uganda are represented in this meeting. So today we are here for the validation exercise on enhancing state and non-state actors' understanding of the contentious legal issues underlying the NGO legal framework. And our consultant, Counsel Peter Majela, will be taking us through today's session. But before we go into that, may I take this opportunity to invite the Executive Director of the Center for Constitutional Governance, Dr. Sarah Birete, to come and share a few words with us to welcome us officially to this gathering. Dr. Sarah, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, our Mistress of Ceremonies. Yeah, most of you must have engaged in activities for review of the NGO legal framework by CCG, led by Peter Magera. It's important also to note that the government is also in the process of reviewing the NGO laws. So CCG, in partnership with the GIZ, saw it fit to prepare the sector ahead of the government process, but also to identify the gaps that we need addressed in this legal framework. So it's I wish to thank our partners, GIZ, for enabling us take time to look at these laws before government commences its process. And I'm sure that after this process, we shall have a position as CSO actors on what we think should be changed, on what we think should be modified, and how it should be modified to better serve the sector than starting a process of government when people have no position, have not had time for a critical review of these laws, and have not thought together as a group, a critical stakeholder that engages with the day-to-day regulation of the NGOs in Uganda. Most of you must be aware of the bureaucratic nature of regulation that we go through, and I hope you have complied for your annual filing of returns to several agencies. And I know it's bureaucratic. Most organizations that have the means actually recruit a staff for compliance. And you wonder why a sector should go through such burdens of having such a bureaucratic compliance regime of complying to about 7 entities. I don't know how they are in total, Peter, 7 or 8, about there, depending on what you do. And even the nature of compliance required at times needs either financial or legal expertise. Previously, we have had good funding in the sector, where you find that there are entities facilitated to help NGOs with compliance. Previously, under DGF went. Now there has been some efforts under USAID. USAID is no more. So each entity is on its own. And if you don't have legal and financial experts, that compliance is difficult sometimes. If you check the NGO Bureau website, you will find that a few, I don't know how many there are. I know that CCG complied this week. We were also late because of so many issues. Because we are supposed to finish this annual compliance by January. But usually it's not easy. By the time you do your audits, you finish with URSB, finish with KCCA, finish with now it's good the data, the FIA is now off our back thanks to the people who worked on the amendment for the Anti-Money Laundering Act. So we are no longer now we are no longer now responsible entities for anti-money laundering in the country. And that's a good step, especially since we are preparing for elections. Also, the matter of compliance comes in handy for those who work on elections. We shall be on the spot this year. Whether you like it or not, the people will look for you. If you work on governance, it's time for us to be in that spotlight where previously some NGOs were accused of funding terrorism. Some of our colleagues were picked up on election day as we compiled data for elections. So we are in that year of elections. Voting is in the about 12th January. It will soon be fixed. So the thrust of campaign activities shall take place this year. So you must make sure that your house is in order. Although that's not 100% proof that they won't come for you, because sometimes they don't need a reason. But at least don't give them a reason to raid your organizations. Let them invite themselves. But if you don't comply, then you invite them to your organizations. Yet we are on the spot as entities who work on governance. So I know that the expert will share more, and as we together go through the work that he has done. So I don't want to take more of your time. I welcome you to this meeting, and I wish you fruitful deliberations.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah Birete, for the opening, the welcome remarks. May I now take this opportunity to invite Farida from GIZ to come and also say a few words before we have the presentation on the review of the NGO laws and regulations. Farida, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Judith. And thank you, Dr. Sarah. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Like Judith said, there are going to be really few words because Dr. Sarah has said most of it. But to start it off, I bring you greetings from the Governance and Civil Society Support Program at GIZ, and most specifically, from the Human Rights and Conducive Environment component where I work. And I thank CCG for inviting me. They could have chosen not to invite me. But this is a conversation that is so pertinent to me as a professional, but to me as an individual as well. Because I don't think the activism spirit, the defending spirit can get out of me. Yeah, so today it's a great opportunity that we get to see what the consultant and CCG at large has prepared from the review process they had undertaken for over 2 months, I think. I know we have had focus group discussions, we have had one-on-one engagements. We know these issues, but it's important that we validate them and we have a position that we all agree with. so that when the government comes, I think next month, Dr. Sarah, we are very ready to present. This is the right thing, but it's also very important because the human rights-based approach says so. We have to effectively participate. We have to effectively engage stakeholders, and we are the stakeholders. So for today, I'm very happy to be here to listen in. I know some of the issues. These laws, the policy had issues even before it was passed. Then it got passed. Then implementation, we have had issues. We have lived with them. And it's good that the government has come up to also review, and we hope something good is going to come out of it. The process is on. I think the schedule is about to come out soon, the final schedule. We need to follow through this process until the end, because the environment we work in changes every day. It's very dynamic. The context, the political, the social, the economic, the globalization, digitalization, everything. It's important that we keep tabs with this environment. Our recommendations, we keep tabs and see if they will be incorporated, and we keep tabs to ensure that even when the government comes to our districts, we effectively participate. I thank you all for coming. It's not everybody that will be committed to this, and I wish you fruitful deliberations today. But before I go, I want to thank CCG, the consultant, and everyone, and I hope something good comes out of it. Thank you so much. I wish you a good day.
Thank you, Farida, and thank you to GIZ for making this exercise a reality. It's a very important conversation for us to have and for us to reflect on as a sector. It is now my pleasure to invite our consultant, Council Peter Majela. Please, the floor is yours. We are all your students for today, eagerly waiting to hear what you have to share.
Thank you, Judith. Sarah asked me how many entities we report to now. I think right now we are reporting to, we have URSB or Ministry of Lands, depending on what you are. We have URA, NSSF. The law recently was changed to remove the threshold for NSSF. So the new law says any potential employer has to register. Previously, you needed to have 5 staff or more. So now everyone has to go NSSF. We've had FIA, I'll put a star. This was removed recently. Then we've had NGO Bureau. Then we've had Data Protection Office. These are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we have local governments. So only this has been removed. So we remain with 6 now, reporting entities. If we split local governments, we have the upper and the lower. We have sub-counties, so it's quite hectic. Now, the review we have today has nothing to do with all these guys, except the NGO Bureau and the local government. Why? It's because those are the guys in the policy. Of course, the policy brings in a few other people. We shall see about it. So we've been going on this process. Many of you, we've had a back and forth, either in focus group discussions or in individuals when we talk, like a call or a physical meeting. This is a report which was a study that was commissioned by CCG to study the NGO policy and the NGO Act. So let's be specific, policy and act. I don't know, by show of hands, how many of us have read the NGO policy? Oh, seem to be lonely in this. Okay, how many have read the NGO Act? Okay, seems to be the same hands. How many have read the NGO regulations? There are 3. Okay, the hands reduce further. Okay, how many have read the recent amendment to the NGO Act, the one that does rationalization? Okay, about 5. Okay, so, and that's partly the problem, is that even from our side, we hardly read these things, and I don't blame you. It's a thing that is Ugandan thing. A lot of times we don't read the laws that govern us, the policies that govern us. But also there's a bigger problem with the NGOs, is that many people in NGOs are passionate about what they do. So their energies are all, if you're in health, the person who drinks, eats, sleeps health. If you're in education, you know, if you're in climate change, you don't get the time to even look on the side. So that's why a lot of times this happens. But so it was thought wise that since many people don't really read through this, let's do an analysis and get issues that are in this policy and in this act and highlight them. So when we came to many of you, some people would say things without necessarily knowing that this is in the act or the policy. For example, someone would tell you, like, every time I go to the district, they toss me around. Or someone says, no, the district representatives are not there. Or maybe the NGO bureau asks for too many things. So the too many things could be having a background, which is either in the policy or the act. So you'll find the act says, to apply for this, attach a list of like 5 things. So maybe people don't know that those are coming from the policy. So maybe they think it's this office which is making us suffer. So that's how the thing was done. We had a methodology. I've already talked a bit about the methodology we used. I need to stand behind this light. The methodology we used, which was we did desk review and we did focus group discussions, which a number of you we shared with you. The desk review used what we call interpretive analysis, where you interpret the meaning of words, and that analysis is used in analyzing policies mainly, where policies and laws, where you see what does the word a certain policy uses mean, and then you go to look at how is it applied in practice. I'll give you an example. The policy defines NGOs. There is a definition of NGO. I want to repeat it. I always joke about NGOs when we are defining NGOs. NGOs, even NGO leaders, for some reason, they define NGOs by what they are not, as opposed to what they are. So when you ask someone, what's an NGO? He says, it's not for profit. It's non-partisan. It's none this, not this. But what is it? They never tell you what it is. They tell you what it's not, which I always find challenging to understand. But that has been like a worldwide definition of what NGOs have been. Now, when we come to the policy, I will talk about particular things I find in the policy. But in the report, first we highlight how NGOs came into Uganda. What we know as NGOs today did not exist in pre-colonial days, even in colonial days. What existed were more of self-help groups, more of civil society as opposed to NGOs. Hopefully we can make the difference. So what existed was more of civil society. People would come together over an issue, and once the issue is done, that grouping is sort of disbanded. I'll give you an example. If people wanted to construct a well, a water well. They would come together in the village, mobilize themselves, work on the water well. Once it's done, there is no more group. But that moved during the earlier years of pre-independence. It moved into movement for self-rule, and that's why you see the 1930s when Ugandans start coming together to demand for self-rule. They formed what would really be like NGOs, and their demonstrations throughout most of Uganda, demonstrating against the hat and gun tax. If you remember, in some areas there were demonstrations which were like, we are demonstrating against this group. For example, you have in Bunyoro demonstrating against Baganda, but it wasn't really against Baganda, it was against colonial rule. In Kasese, you have a group, I forget the exact name, demonstrating against Toro rule, which begins in 1929. But it's because Toro Kingdom was a collaborator and its people were the ones governing most of what is Busongora. And then they are demonstrating against colonial rule, but the face of colonial rule is Toro. And that's why even when you look at languages, this is outside the report, I never put this in the report. But when you look at languages, for example, I come from Toro where we have a name for soldiers. So the soldiers in Rutoro are called Abarusura, which is the same as Bunyoro. But the name for government soldiers is Baserikali, which is picked from the word Serikali, which is a Swahili word, which means government. So the first we interacted with as government were soldiers. They were not government as we know it today. And all responses, all civil society then was responding to government, to soldiers. And most of it would be crushed. So the first formal civil society in Uganda matches with the first formal civil society across the world. So you have many, what we know as NGOs start forming after World War II. That's where you have CARE, USAID, and the rest in the world. But because they form after World War II, even in Uganda, they start coming into Uganda in the 1950s. Remember, World War II ends in 45? Yeah, so in the early 50s, you have a few, like Uganda Wildlife Society, then you have many of them religious-based, coming as formal NGOs. There is no law that governs them at that time because they are a new phenomena across the world. They are quite new. Then in the 60s, we see a bit of increase in NGOs, and then we have the turmoil in the 70s. So in the 70s, we have a lot of relief NGOs coming into Uganda to help relief. So the former NGOs have been relief. That is in the 70s, in the 80s, up to, so when the present government decides to make the first NGO law, the law was made before the policy. The first NGO law ever in Uganda is made in 1989. Remember, they had captured power in 1986. And a lot of NGOs had worked in the Luero Triangle War, 1980, 86. And then after 86, there's the HIV scourge. So a lot of NGOs now are turning from war relief to HIV AIDS. Now, 86, those who were focused on war are moving into HIV AIDS, and you are moving into HIV AIDS, which means you're moving from providing tangible things, providing relief, food, water, medicine. You're moving from that and you start moving into a bit of policy advocacy. And as you move into policy advocacy, government says, wait a moment, we need to regulate these people. So the first NGO law comes in 89 to regulate that group of people. It comes in and brings in a few quite hard things. Under that law, an NGO would not reach a community, a rural community in Uganda, without permission from, then they were RCs, resistance councils. You needed to get permission from a resistance council, even to get your permit. So they introduced the first NGO certificates, and this is the confusion we had, which we still have today, is as NGOs, remember, NGOs at that time were incorporated. So they have certificate of incorporation. The new law introduces certificate of registration, which required you, the first certificate was 1 year. Then after 1 year, you could apply for 3 years. After 3 years, you could apply for 5 years. Now, not this period. Today, you can have your permit for a maximum of 5 years. And that 5 years has its history here. So government decides to change the NGO. No, that NGO thing shows the coming of HIV/AIDS. So many NGOs coming into the country. And at that time, the war in northern Uganda was also happening. So we have relief, whereas by 89, when the law is being made, the thinking is, maybe war is done, so NGOs maybe will move into other things. But then there's a war in northern Uganda, so you have a lot of NGOs moving into relief still in northern Uganda and what became South Sudan. And then, again, a lot of NGOs coming into HIV/AIDS. But then the NGOs are saying we also need to influence policy, because if we are going to do what we want to do, we move into policy. So you have also a lot of NGOs coming into advocacy spaces. Because of that, NGOs decide to start now networking. Then you have DENIVA being formed in 1989, NGO Forum being formed in 93, Hurinet being formed in early 90s, I forget the exact time. UONET also follows and all that. But why are we having those networks formed? They are being formed to advocate. They are moving into policy, as opposed to originally where they were in relief. And as you move into policy, a few things come up. So the NGOs now start advocating for change of law. First thing government does is it does the NGO policy in 2010. So the NGO policy comes up in 2010 with not so much engagement of the NGOs. It's the policy that has brought us here today. It has not been changed since then. And then slightly before that, before the policy comes in, NGOs had advocated for change of the law, and the law gets changed. Work to change the NGO law begins around 2001. NGOs form what they call CONOB. I think it's only Benson who was part of CONOB. CONOB was Coalition on NGO Bill. So it was a coalition of NGOs. I was still a young student. I participated in CONOB things. The strangest thing I saw, this is off record, the strangest thing I saw is we went to Ginger and we spent a whole week drafting a bill to be tabled in Parliament. But somehow that bill never reached Kampala. Between Ginger and Kampala, it got lost. But now, if you ask people who were there, they will tell you so many versions of what happened. But after spending a week drafting an alternative bill, and agreeing on the alternative bill. I think we were about maybe 80 NGO leaders. Me, I was a student, so I don't count myself among NGO leaders, but I was one of the students drafting. We submitted the document, and it ended there. It never saw the light of day. And a new bill came in. So this bill, NGOs had wanted to do their alternative bill, but it never saw the light of day. So the government bill took the day, which is the amendment to the NGO Act in 2006. Yes, 206 is when that amendment comes in. So what does the 206 come in? It brings in interesting things. It defines NGOs. Still, the definition, people might not find it interesting, but the interesting bit is it brings in an aspect of Ugandan NGOs and foreign NGOs. That's when the first categorization comes. If you're a Ugandan NGO, you needed to be incorporated in Uganda by Ugandans. Foreign NGO, you needed to be outside Uganda. Now, when the policy came later, it also defined NGOs. Now, the policy defined them categorized them in very interesting bits. They had the category of Ugandan, indigenous. They dropped Uganda. They made it indigenous NGOs. For indigenous, it must be incorporated in Uganda, run by Ugandans. Then they brought regional NGOs. For regional, it must be at least one of the people on it comes from the East African community. Then they brought in foreign. At least one of the people on the NGO must be from outside Africa. Then they brought in continental. One of the people on it must be from Africa, but outside East African community. And the rest. Now, so what happened? I was asked to project, but I have it in Word because it's a long story. Yeah. So what happened? That those definitions as they came in. Today, how we find it is when you're an NGO, CCG, and CCG, you saw it wise to bring Peter, who is European, on your board. Now, CCG, when all of us have been knowing it as Ugandan, it immediately changes to become foreign. Just because CCG has brought in a foreigner on its management. So that has tended to create like different treatment for different entities. So CCG might be having 500 members. Of the 501, Peter is a foreigner. And the whole thing has to be defined as foreign. Now that's something that has come from the policy and the Act has maintained. The other issue that came in is the definition of community-based organizations. So they said these are organizations that operate at sub-county level and below. It came in the 2010 definition and then was maintained in the 2016 Act. However, note that by 2016, there are community-based organizations which are working in more than one sub-counties. So they needed them choose which sub-county, drop the work in the other sub-county, and come and work in this one. But we need to understand how community-based organizations work. Community-based organizations work alongside issues. Let me say, they say we want to mobilize money and pay school fees for orphans in our community. Now, they normally don't look at, but that orphan is from the other side. You get? For them, they look at orphans. So when you say they should be based in sub-counties, it means they are going to say, okay, yes, yours is an orphan, but an orphan from the other side. That has been one challenge. If you want to understand the challenge well, you look at, we all have used Northern Bypass. So Northern Bypass is one road. One side, if you are driving in Northern Bypass around Kireka, you are in Wakiso. If you reach around here, around Intinda, you are in Kampala. And if you reach around after Waise, you are in Wakiso. Now, also likewise here where we are, I think we are in Nakawa division. This is Nakawa. Okay. When you go to Kisasi, one side of the road is Kawempe, the other side of the road is Nakawa. So if you're a CBO based there, you might not be allowed to cross the road. Because, yes, I think Chanja is Kawempe. Nakawa. So across Chanja is Kawempe. Yes. So you might not be allowed to cross the road doing your work. So what I'm trying to say is that definition of CBOs has limited them so much that it's very hard for them to want to follow it because the boundaries are so small. I've seen Gulu. I've had situations where someone was operating in Peche. It's also an issue of the road. So you cross the road, you are in Laibi. Yes. And it's split into two. I've seen that. Yeah. Now, related to that is also another issue on the permit, where the permit was, the law said the permit can put in place conditions for work. And some permits put condition for work where they say, you are going to work in this district. And then you wake up, the district has been split. I've seen that in Jinja, I've seen that in Gulu, I've seen that in Soroti. You see, when they split a district, it's easy. It became very hard when they split it into cities. So there is Soroti district and Soroti city, Gulu district and Gulu city, Arua district and Arua city. They have the same names. And sometimes you can't even tell whether I'm in the city or I'm in the... So you would have cows and RDCs and all that other people come and saying, you are Gulu, your permit says you operate in Gulu, but this is Gulu city, so please move to Gulu. So there has been those challenges because the permit is quite limiting, but we shall come back to the permit. The other thing we found problematic is definition of faith-based organizations, because the policy said that faith-based organizations should not be under the NGO regulation, but they did not provide them where they are. Many faith-based organizations, for you to be able to do faith-based work, you find yourself being an NGO. So if you want to start a church, because there is no alternative legal something for you to be a church, you find yourself coming to being NGOs. Now what happened is there is a whole big mess of faith-based organizations because the policy is not clear. What do those faith-based organizations do? Say for example, Centenary Bank is a faith-based organization, not so? Centenary Bank. But it's not an NGO. Okay. What about Protestant Medical Bureau? They run health services. Or ADRA, Adventist Development Agency. It's an NGO, right? And it's faith-based. Okay. What about if I want to start a church, like there, and I register an NGO? So mine is evangelism, just preaching. You come, we preach every Sunday. I also am an NGO. So it became very hard to tell with the exception of the obvious, like Centenary Bank, which is a bank, is a business, go to businesses. But these other people providing soft services, they provide actually what NGOs provide, including those who do provide just prayers, you know, because what NGOs provide is the soft, the psychological, and the rest. So ever since that time up to now, we are always into faith-based, say, for us, we are not regulated by you. And then when something happens, they say, NGOs are doing this. You get? Because by registration, they are NGOs. When it's bad, NGOs are doing this. When it's good, we are not. That has been a big problem. Now, let's move into a few things we've found within the other aspects of both the policy and the act. So the other thing we found in the policy is that the policy creates too many levels of reporting. So the policy has one first level is the implementing agencies of the policy. The first is Office of the Prime Minister, OPM. Now please note that the Act dropped OPM. So that's why many of us do not report to OPM, and that's the difference. But OPM still holds a hand for those dealing in relief. So the first, it creates OPM. So many of you might be discovering this for the first time. Then below the OPM is Ministry of Internal Affairs. There has also been a debate on why we should be under Ministry of Internal Affairs and not Ministry of Gender, because we provide social services. Then below that, the policy creates RDCs. It's still RDCs. Please note, the Act dropped RDCs. In practice, the RDCs are still so much with us. Why? It's because when you go to the RDC and you tell him, but the law says don't come, they will pull out the policy and say, the policy says, I'm there. So that's the other thing. Then it creates local governments. So the policy at local government, it creates the NGO monitoring committee at district level, comprised of so the policy, under the policy, it's comprised of the RDC as the chairperson. Under the Act, the CAO is the chairperson. Then it has the CAO, District Community Liaison Officer, Secretary for Education, Secretary for Health, one representative of NGOs, DEO, yes, that's the District Education Officer. Now, from our analysis and our discussion with many people, one of the findings is that there are so many people on that committee whose business is not NGOs. You see, the CAO is interested in the NGO operating in the district, irrespective of what that NGO does. Tick. The CDO is interested in what the district NGO does in the district, irrespective of what that NGO does. However, the Secretary for Education or the District Education Officer might only be interested in those dealing with his sector. So is the health. Now, what has happened in practice is, if NGOs are meeting, if they are meeting to discuss NGOs, if they are discussing NGOs on health, the person of health will attend. If they are discussing NGOs on climate change, the person of health might not show up, and the person of education might not show up, because those things are outside their realm. The end result is no quorum. And the end result is no decision is made on your document. Because these things are outside. And to make matters worse, these people are not facilitated to come and meet. So their only motivation to come and meet is if what they are discussing relates with their departments. If it doesn't, they don't come. That's one. The other issue we found is that other than having people who have no interest in the Bureau, is the law and the policy did not provide guidelines on how DNMCs and SNMCs should meet. For example, what's the quorum? Can two people meet and say we are quorum? How often should they meet? What is the procedure? You see, when you look at all the other bodies, the law, when the law creates a committee, they normally go in the schedule and put how the committee will conduct its business, which was not done. And so that's why in many districts, DNMCs and SNMCs are not operational because the laws have not provided guidelines on how they should operate. And some of us who have been like me, we've been to these districts with the NGO bureau telling them, you people, you operate, you people, you are not supposed to ask for money, all that. We've done that for the last 6 years, 7 years, and nothing has happened because it's not in the law. So when you talk, they will listen, but they won't act. Yeah. The other gap we found with the DNMCs and SNMCs is, whereas it says there will be a representative of NGOs at all of those, including at national level, it did not guide us on how we select those representatives. So in some districts, the cow comes and says, yes, you are my friend, I can make you a representative of NGOs. He does. Those of us who were there when we submitted names to the national, to the minister, the letter Ronda, to appoint the district NGO, the national representative at the NGO bureau, we submitted 2 names, and the letter Ronda said, no, you're not the ones appointing. He wrote back, said, you're not the ones appointing. Give me many names and I choose from them. But because we had gone through an elective process and reached at 2 names, there was no appetite and no resource to redo the process. So what he did, he picked one from the 2 names and picked another one many of us had never had. So your representatives are Margaret Sekaja, we had submitted that name, and he put the other person, I don't even remember the person's name. You met him once, okay. He put the other person as a representative, and many people kept asking, does that person run an NGO? Some would say yes, some would say no. We don't know him basically. And that's what has even been happening at district level. The other option I've seen happening at district level is where some districts said, okay, district NGO forums, you are the ones to represent NGOs. And then you have some NGOs which are not members of the district NGO forums. Say, but for us, we are not members, so are we going to be represented by this person? Some districts, like Ginger City did recently, the cows called all NGOs and says, guys, come and we form a district NGO forum. So they called them, formed a district NGO forum, appointed an ED of that forum, said, he's your representative. That's what happened in Ginger just, I think, towards the end of last year, Ginger City. Because the district NGO forum was Ginger District NGO Forum. It didn't have the word city in its name. When the city was created, they told it, go to the district. Now for the city, let's create one. Yes. Now, the other challenge we've had is, whereas the other government offices, we know the time limits for them, the NGO representatives, we don't know how long they should serve. Because we don't know how long they should serve, Like Benson here is a representative of NGOs in Soroti. So if Benson goes on radio and he says things about the cow, the next day he will receive a letter replacing him. And Benson cannot say, but my term of office is yet to elapse. He doesn't even know the terms under which he's serving, but he's serving. Why? The law did not provide for the terms. The law did not, both law and policy did not provide for that. Then they created that other level, which I find problematic. The sub-county NGO monitoring committees at each sub-county. Now, we all know where sub-counties report to, not so? The official government hierarchy is sub-county reports to district, which is like the cow, and then the cow to central government. Now, you have a situation where you sign an MOU with the district. I'll come to the MOUs, but you sign an MOU with the district. But you have to report to the sub-county and report to the district. Same report. And they just created an extra layer of bureaucracy. Personally, I've not understood why we have the sub-county NGO monitoring committees. And from the research, that was a major concern. Even for CBOs, which work at sub-county level, the only role the sub-county plays in registering a CBO is to recommend the CBO to go to the district. And you wonder, like, if you are recommending me to go to the district, and the district gives me a certificate, so why do I have to report to you and to the district every other time? Why can't I report straight to the district? That has been a problem. Then, allow me go back a bit to CBOs, which do not have legal personality, which means they can't own property, they can't sue, they can't be sued. And that has been problematic because a number of CBOs have wanted to move and get property. Truth is, today when a donor gives a CBO a motorcycle, that motorcycle remains in the donor's name, or one of the members of the CBO will register it in his name or her names. When the CBO dismantles, he walks away with it. Because it's his, it's in his name. That has been the problem. Now, it has been a bit hard to change, and this one I'm saying, let me assume I'm off camera, but I will still say it. The NGO Bureau in this research suggests that CBOs which grow to a certain level should be forced to become NGOs as a solution to that problem. I personally found it not a solution, but rather a problem, because people have a freedom to associate. So it's up to you to remain CBO or be company. Now, if we put it in the law that because you have money, now you must be this, it becomes an issue with freedom of association. That's a problem I have. Of course, the other problem that has come from lack of incorporation of CBOs is names. You've been a CBO running for 5-10 years, you are known by a certain name, you go to register your name, you find a certain Peter already registered your name ahead of you, and you can no longer use that name. The other aspect we found is you're a CBO, you are working in a sub-county somewhere in Moroto, and you see Center for Constitutional Government is a good name. You pick it. And you start being known as Center for Constitutional Governance. Then one day, Center for Constitutional Governance gets a grant to work in that sub-county. Then people say, but there is the other center we know. Who are you? Say, no, for us we are registered. You speak a lot of legal English. And they say, no, but for us we've been here as this. So there is a clash between the CBO and the NGO because of of that gap. Of course, we are recommending something which many people might find a bit controversial, is that we are recommending CBOs to at least register their names as a business name, such that no one else is going to take away your name. The danger with that, we are creating an extra obligation, which you didn't have. But we believe it's an extra obligation for your good. Otherwise, people will be running away with your names. Then, okay, I think people need me to project. I could project this. It's in Word. It's in Word, so that's why the challenge would be. And I'm one of those who don't believe in PowerPoint. Help me with that. My bad. Okay, so okay, I guess I could project using this. Is it there yet? Is it there yet? Is the source... Okay, he'll help me as I discuss. It's here. Okay, so that's the other thing we found with the CBOs. Then we have issues, the issue which came, it also comes from both the policy and the act. The too many documents required. And too many documents required, I want to split it into two. A lot of documents required for registration, and a lot of documents required for, like, filing returns. But let me begin with the one required for registration. So at registration, we found that actually the policy has about two, yeah, it's okay. The policy has about 3 requirements. Your core government, it also adds, let me see, MOU, recommendation, organogram, they need your organogram, plan, and budget. That's what the law, that's the regulations, that's what they add. Then, when it comes to, so I need to scroll up to where? I need to scroll up to where this is, because I have, okay. So, okay. So this is what is required. Statements, okay, this is what is in the regulations, but we have a certificate, copy of the constitution or memorandum, evidence of payment, and the regulations added these. So the main law requires you to have 3 things. The NGO regulations requires you to have 13. on top of the 3. This is a form. These 2 are forms in the regulations. So, whereas the Act required you to have a certificate, here they added an aspect of it should be notarized. Copy of memorandum and articles, that's also there. So, from here, organogram, payment of certificates, statement indicating sources of funding, national ID of passport of promoters, minutes of a meeting deciding that you will be registering the bureau, registered resolution from URSB, statement complying with Section 45 of the NGO Act, that's employment of non-Ugandans, recommendation from the DNMC of where you are, and recommendation from line ministry. So they added all these. Now, we found this being too much, at least for everyone discussing it. And many people are saying, is this necessary? So, there are other things added, not in this law. For example, the requirement for the FIA certificate is not in this law. The requirement for data protection certificate is also not in this law. So there are other things with time. Yeah, if you are foreigner, there is Interpol. Clearance of criminal. Yeah, so there are those other ones on top of these. Actually, the information request form is also not here. Is about 20 pages, but it also requires you to fill all these. Yeah. So, we found the policy and the regulations added quite a number of hectic requirements, but these are added on top of these. These are added as administrative. You have to literally write an application letter. Letter addressed to the ED for you to apply. Now it's a secretary. Indicating areas of operation. They want your annual budget and work plan. They want your tax identification number. That's not part of the law. Governing documents now, they want to see what is the quorum in your governing documents. They want to see what your governing documents say in case you wind up, who do you give that property to? And yeah, so these are all added. Now, the bottom line is too much document work. Now, this document work is required when you are registering as an NGO or when you are applying for a permit. There is other document which is required. Now, okay, before I go to the other document. When you look at this document, there is a small change that we found, is that if you are an NGO that has been based here in Uganda, you need this certificate, which you get from URSB. Now, URSB will add their things, beneficial owners and the rest and the rest and the rest. If you're a foreign NGO, you don't need these. So foreign NGOs just go straight to. So there's an extra layer of bureaucracy for local NGOs, which foreign as foreign, not foreign in the definition of the Act. Foreign as in, if you don't come from Uganda, you skip the URSB level. You go straight to there. So there is a bit of different treatment. Locals have to be treated to an extra requirement. Then, then for CBOs, this is what we found. You fill a form. we didn't find any CBO that has filled that form. That's the interesting bit. Because different districts have developed different approaches. They want a copy of the constitution, a recommendation letter from the sub-county, work plan, budget, proof of payment of fees. Now, fees for NGOs, whereas they are there in the regulations, specific how much, no one ever pays that fees. Each district has its own fees. When you look at the CBOs, even the law requires CBOs to have a permit got from the NGO Bureau. No CBO has gotten that permit. They don't. They just get to the district. Now, districts, so yeah, that's what I was coming to. Some districts have confused permits with certificates of registration. A certificate of registration should be one-off, but many districts are issuing certificates of registration on a yearly basis for CBOs. What that means is every year you have to show up and ask for a new certificate. That is quite some work. But other than it being quite some work, it means you have to be careful. If you criticize me and yet you are showing up in a few months' time, you need a permit, a certificate, you have to think. Yeah? You're not going to go on radio and say Peter is corrupt, because tomorrow you'll show up at his office, you need a certificate. You'll say, oh, you've come. Now tell me how am I corrupt before I give you the thing. to toe the right line. Eh? Okay, so then on permits, you need the same requirements. I've already talked about this rule for CBOs to have permits, and that's problematic. But NGOs need to have permits. We've written a lot about it. The permits are a maximum of 5 years, but you can be given 1 year or less. On top of the paperwork you need for a permit, the permits have two issues that you need to address. One is it has a geographical limit. You can have a permit which says you'll work nationwide, like Denver has a permit which says you work nationwide. Or you can have a permit which says you work only in Soroti. Now the ones which say you work only in Soroti is where we found a problem. You work only in Soroti, then they create Soroti City, and then Soroti City says, please go to Soroti. And you have to find your level. But also we found it a bit problematic where you now get a grant. Maybe the permit says you'll work in Teso, 5 districts in Teso. Then you get a grant which extends to Karamoja. So you have to come back and change your permit so that you can work in Karamoja. That becomes a bit of problematic. The other thing we found problematic on the permits is the subject area. Okay, the subject area. The permit has a subject limitation. If you read the permit, it will say the NGO has been registered to work in water and sanitation. And where we found problems in that is tomorrow you get a grant to plant trees. Because you know, if we plant trees, we will control climate change and whatever that is. So we still are within water, not so? But someone says, no, your permit says you work in water, not in planting trees. So if you want to plant trees, go back and change. So the subject limitation in permits has been a bit problematic. Then before we go to filing returns, there's penalty for the permits. Okay, before I go to penalties, there is the issue of MOUs. You have a permit which says you work countrywide. But then the law says before you work in a district, have an MOU with that district. Which means if that district says we are not giving you an MOU, it means your permit is allowing you to work countrywide except that district. And in other words, you have a bureau whose power is cut. Because if the bureau issues you something to work anywhere in the country, then there is some cow who can say, yes, work anywhere in the country except here. So who is more powerful? So we found the requirement of MOUs actually undermines the power of the NGO bureau, because the districts can refuse you to work in their district despite the fact that the bureau has allowed you to work. And that's one undermining thing. Then there are penalties. Penalties on permits, which are problematic. If you work without a permit, it's better than if you've never gotten a permit, you're in a better position than the one who ever got a permit and it expired. If you have never gotten a permit, the punishment for never getting a permit is 1.5 million fine. Actually, it's 1.6 once, because you've never gotten a permit. If you ever get a permit and it expires, your punishment is 2 million per month. I don't know if you've understood me. So the one who has never gotten a permit is in a better position, because if they found him, he'll pay 1.5 one-off and is done. The one who has got a permit and it expires is going to be fined 2 million every month he has not. And we found NGOs that have closed because they cannot pay the penalty. And we've also had situations where, of course, we've had situations where there is a waiver of the penalty. But there is where even after waiving the penalty, what remains, say we've had situations where someone is fined 80 million. And then a waiver comes and they say, we've forgiven you 60, pay 20. But this is an entity that has been closed and is trying to look for funds and come back. So even if you ask for 2, they will struggle to raise it. So you've waived and given them from 80 to 20, but still, they still can't get the 20 and they still can't work. So we've had that. Then filing returns and this paperwork. Of course, I've been advised that I should remove the negative language, the unnecessary paperwork. Initially, we talked about the paperwork relating to registration. Now there is the paperwork relating to filing returns, which is supposed to be done on a yearly basis. So you need to file returns to the NGO Bureau. You file returns to the District Technical Committee headed by the CAO. File returns to the District NGO Monitoring Committee headed by the same CAO. Then file returns to the Sub-County NGO Monitoring Committee, which reports to the same CAO. So you have this paperwork. They will need you to have your budget, your work plan, your audit report, financial report, and statement of sources of funding. You submit it to national level. Then you submit it to the CAO of every, no, not CAO, because if I say CAO, you'll get lost. Submit it to the chairperson of the District NGO Monitoring Committee for every district where you work. So if you work 30 districts, those are 30 offices. that is headed by the cow. Now then submit to the chairperson of district technical committee, who is the same cow. So you submit it 30 times, that's the 30 districts. Then submit the same document 30 times to a different office occupied by the same person. Then submit the same documents to the sub-county. Now, if you are working in 3 sub-counties in one district, so that is same set of documents 3 times, and those sub-counties, each of them report to the same cow whom you submitted 2 sets already. And multiply that by the number of districts and number of sub-counties. So if you're in 30 sub-counties, 30 districts, that's 30 times 2 at district level. Now, if in each of those districts you're working in just 2 sub-counties, it is 2 times 30. Yeah, I'm editing this because I'm still like writing. You see, I think we had the last focus group discussion yesterday but one. No, we just had one yesterday. Oh, yeah, that is last week. So, onerous. Yes. I'm going to write and just put onerous. So we are still in edit, even from the feedback we get today, we'll still enrich this. But you see the paperwork. And that's what Sarah was saying during the opening, that some NGOs, those with means, have found themselves employing a staff whose duty is to meet these obligations. Because the obligations are so many that it can be a full-time job for someone for the whole year. Like he's busy the whole year just responding to. Remember, the ones we are handling here are only for NGO law and policy. We haven't handled FIA, we haven't handled the URSB, we haven't handled any other. So these ones are just that. So here we did a comparison. This table, we did a comparison of what NGOs do and other people. Let me say, if you run a TV station, or a school, or a business, or a health center. So if you run an NGO, you see the X's. So for these ones, if you are running a health center, you might do URSB, you meet company regulations, you meet URA, you meet, that's URA returns, and maybe FIA. If you run a business, these 2 are optional, then you have these. If you run a school, you have these. If you run a TV, you have these and something else. If you run an NGO, now let me scroll down and you see. Okay, if you run an NGO, that is... So when you compare NGOs with other, because a school is doing nearly similar work as NGOs, or a health center, to an extent that some NGOs run health centers and schools. But you can see the difference in obligations. And the TVs, you can see the difference. So there's quite a burden this side. And we found that problematic. Okay? You've seen this. I want to scroll. So you see, it's TVs and radios which seem to have extra, but NGOs continue this side. Because they don't have that. Okay? Then there was a small discussion on self-regulation. But the thing is, with self-regulation, whereas the law calls it self-regulation, it's not self-regulation. Because the law has gone into details on how you should regulate yourself. Like they say, you must have a resolution on how you should be self-regulated. You must have a quorum of this much. You must have, you get. It's not self-regulation because you are telling me how I should conduct my meetings, how many should attend my meetings, how I should handle the decisions from my meetings, and then you are saying, but you are regulating yourself. So that's what we found, the self-regulation. Now let me talk small thing about rationalization as we come to recommendations. So we all know rationalization happened. It happened across all sectors. And the NGO, there's one small misconception. I want us to first understand it before we go into the discussion. What we need to understand is we used to have an NGO bureau as a semi-autonomous entity. Let me write. So we used to have, where is the marker? Okay. So this is what used to be there. We had Ministry of Internal Affairs. Below it we had NGO Bureau. Now, under the NGO Bureau, so this is like a body, you get? So under this body we had a board, the board of the NGO Bureau. Then we had executive director. Then we had secretariat. It was before Russia. Do we have a different color of a marker? Okay. So this is what we had before rationalization. What rationalization has done is this. They removed this. There is no more NGO. There is no more board of NGO Bureau. So what used to be this is now called NGO Bureau. I guess you are confused. So there used to be an NGO Bureau. The apex body of the NGO Bureau was a board. What they've done, they said, we are removing this apex body called a board. And then they went and said, however, there's a bureau. And this bureau is composed of these people. So these people who were a board are now a bureau. Yeah. So there used to be a bureau which is an entity, like you see Deneva, like you have Deneva, and Deneva has a GM, and then it has a board, and then a secretariat. So you come and say, we are removing the board. And we are renaming the board Deneva. You get? So there was NGO Bureau, which had a structure of board, executive director, secretariat. Then you come and say, the board of the NGO Bureau has ceased to exist. And we've renamed that board NGO Bureau. It's yes. Okay, let me explain. Before, you remember, I began by taking you through the history. So, before 2016, there was an NGO board. Not bureau, board. You get? So, in 2016, there was a thinking that we need to create a semi-autonomous body. So they created a semi-autonomous body and called it NGO Bureau. That body is headed by a board of directors. You get? And then all the other things below. What has happened with rationalization, we've gone back to the pre-2016 position and renamed what used to be NGO board Bureau. Yeah. So it's a bit confusing. Now, this is one change. What was a bureau is now a board. The second change is we no longer have ED, now we have secretary. And we no longer have a secretariat, now we have, it's just twisting words. We call them staff. I don't know if it makes a difference, but but because we used to say staff of the secretariat, not so. Now they say now those are staff. So the new border is like this. NGO Bureau, still headed by so the people who were on the board of the NGO Bureau, you remember the board of the NGO Bureau had like NGO representatives, are now called NGO Bureau. It's no longer board. Below them, the person who was ED is now secretary. But it's not a secretary to the Bureau. It's just a secretary, but not to the Bureau. You get? I don't know. The question was, is a secretary to what? I don't know, because the law says he's not a secretary to the Bureau. So he attends Bureau meetings as an ex-official, but he's not their secretary. So the Bureau, they don't want to use that word, chief executive, because in the government system, there's no chief executive. There's only one chief executive in this country. So when they took it back, there's no chief executive. It's a secretary who is at a level of a commissioner. Not so? So he's a commissioner. He's not to the Bureau, he's a commissioner in the ministry. He's a commissioner he's a commissioner in the ministry whose role is Bureau work. Now that we've understood, I'm presuming you've understood, because it's confusing. I think I can explain it 20 times, but still we live confused. So this is how it is now. Those were left intact. The rest remains intact. The commissioner, yes. So the other one, suits are against Attorney General. Now the other thing they removed here is the law used to say that the Bureau can open branches. That was removed because it's no longer a body that can do its own offices. You get? So the branches were removed. And that's why in our advocacy, in our document, we are saying, let's use ministry offices to decentralize the service. You get? So that's what happened with the rationalization, and now let me go to the key changes. So the key changes is exactly what I've said. They dissolved it from being a bureau as a semi-independent entity, removing its power to sue and be sued. Then they created a bureau of 7 people made up of chairperson, vice chairperson, 2 representatives of NGOs, and 3 other persons. That's the same structure that was there anyway. It was a board, now it has been renamed a bureau. Then they removed executive director, replaced it as secretary, stroke commissioner. Well, the law doesn't call him a commissioner. So making this person a commissioner was an administrative arrangement. The law doesn't say he's a commissioner. The law says there is a secretary. And why they made him a commissioner is they realized people will be leaving because these jobs are small. So they said, okay, we are promoting you so that you can stay. Otherwise, secretary. Yeah. Then these permits and certificates will remain if it has been issued before September 24th. After September 24th, if you picked your permit, and now I'm going to the effects. If you picked your permit or certificate, it is signed by Executive Director, NGO, Bureau. And we've said that position is no longer there, which means it has to be signed now. Okay, from what they've told us, it will be signed by the Secretary, NGO, Bureau. Not secretary to the Bureau. Those are different things. That is going to require an amendment of the law because this certificate and permit are forms in the regulations. So they will amend the regulations by deleting the word executive director and replacing it with secretary, wherever it is. But this secretary no longer issues permits and certificates. Permits and certificates are issued by the Bureau. Now, when they issue, they say, we've approved these people, then he signs. Before that change, you would take your document to that person, looks through your documents and says, this one fulfills, I sign. You get? Now you'll take your documents, they will collect your documents, review them, wait for when that entity is sitting, and say, these are the applications we've got, look through them, and approve. Now it's up to them, I don't know. They may approve in bulk and say, everyone there is approved, or they may say, let's look one by one. When time catches up with them, they say, this is for the next sitting. Ideally, these guys sit once every 4 months, every 3 months. That is 4 times a year. So we know what it's going to be. In practical terms, it's going to be that if you've been taking 6 months to get your permit, now you have to pray and do whatever you can to make sure that your name is on the agenda of that entity's meeting, not just on the agenda, but when you're on the agenda, you are approved. That is the direct impact of rationalization. We've written about it, but I realized if I go through how we've written it, I needed to explain. So, because of course you see here we are talking about the permits, yeah, and who signs them. Of course, the international effect, that one may not be so much of our interest. The potential for backlog. So we are just saying there is a high potential. We don't know if there will be a backlog. Maybe they find a solution. But there is a concern that this potential is there. That if we've been having a backlog when it didn't require someone to meet, there is likely to be a high backlog when people meet. The other thing which is likely to cause a backlog is there has been a reduction in staff. We couldn't put it in here because by the time we publish, maybe things will have changed. So originally the Bureau had 45 staff members. It required 98. But 45 are the resources they had. So they had other volunteers which would bring them to like 70, but they were there. When they rationalized, they gave them a slot of 16. 1-6. Those are the staff they have. So, because this is an administrative thing, unless we put it as a footnote, it's not something that you never know. They might find money and increase. But remember, what was the reason for rationalization? Save money and save on spending. So they've rationalized them from 45 to 16. That we believe has an effect. That's what we talk about in this paragraph. Where is it? This paragraph. We believe it's going to increase on the turnaround time because really they are 16 and they have to prepare these things to a body that sits once in 3 months, which has to approve. Maybe I'm a prophet of doom, but I don't see them handling the certificates in any time quicker than they used to. That's also there. That's also there. So, yes. Of course, from the other side, people have argued that they are going to digitalize and things might be faster. Yes and no. We've sung the digitalization song since 2016. It's coming to 10 years. The Bureau hasn't digitalized. Instead, it has increased the manual work. Aha. Yes. So for those who haven't heard, the digitalization strategy and policy are yet to be passed. So we may have to wait for that. But also me, as a lawyer who has been involved in land issues, when land digitalized, interesting things happened. A search which used to take us like 3 days started taking us a month. I don't know, but those who have dealt with land will tell you, like, when they digitalized, things, instead of being quicker, I don't know, it might be deliberate, but things became longer. They tell you the person who is supposed to log in and approve hasn't. And you'll be there. Well, there is a positive side. URSB has digitalized and things have really moved well. So when you look at lands and URSB has cut the time from like a month to like 3 or 2 days. Lands has increased the time. So yeah, URSB has a business. Yes. 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 And just tells you, comments and says, go and bring this or approved. But here we'll need to, you'll need still to wait for those guys to meet. So even when you digitalize, if they've not met, you'll still have to wait. Okay. So let me quickly run through some recommendations, because there are many. We have recommendations for the review of the Act. Also, because these are 2 papers, some of them cut across. I could project the policy as well, but we may not have time, and some of them are repetitive. Definitions, we need to change. We recommend that we need to change the definitions of the Act. There's an aspect of definition I didn't talk about, the voluntariness, which is also a bit problematic. And you see, NGOs now are moving from not-for-profit to for-profit. I don't know if you've realized it. Because we are now moving into social enterprise. And a social enterprise, for it to work, it must make profit. The concept of social enterprise is you do business, you make profit, get that profit and invest it in charity. Not so? Then the question is, will you still be called a not-for-profit? Because the thing is, do a social enterprise, make profit, get the profit, and use it for charity. So are you not for profit? Okay, it's something we need to rethink, but that's where we are moving. But that's where we are moving. And hopefully many of you have noticed that it's like a small but technical thing. Like you have to run your social enterprise. For it to make sense, it must make money, which is profit. And it must make enough profit for it to run and for the balance to be in a charity. It's something we need to talk. I saw your hand up. Yeah, social capital. Yeah. I've seen, the bottom line is, it's profit given a different name. Because even in social capital, whatever you call it, you must make money. The idea is, instead of you getting a grant and using it, not making any profit on it, is find something, make a profit, and after you've made that profit, use that profit for something social. Whatever words we use, but it's something we need to think about. Definition of CBOs needs to go beyond sub-counties. Some people have proposed that at least it should be district. Some people have proposed it shouldn't even be district. You get? Because some of these causes go beyond a district. We just say it's an unincorporated entity, that's all. Of course, some people have recommended that they need to incorporate. Then the categorizing of NGOs, you remember regional, national, foreign, international. Many people have said it makes no sense because we are doing the same things. Paperwork, I've already talked about this duplicate paperwork, so I think I don't need to say much about it. Composition of DNMCs, it has come up so strong. People are saying, we have these people, it's too big that it has failed to work. So maybe if only relevant people are on that thing, it could be easy to work. Then participation in representatives, we need mechanism on how we get those representatives. Remove the requirement to get permission from the district to work, because the issue is, if I have permission from the national regulator, why must I get permission from the district? MOU with every district, people felt it limits their ability to work or even to be critical of the district. Returns at district, technical committee, district NGO monitoring committee, and sub-county. What has come out strong is let's file returns in one entity, the bureau, and if the district needs them, go to the bureau. Requirement to register at district level. Many people have said, if we've registered at national level, why must we register at every district when we've already? Remember, at national level, you are registering in about, they were how many? They were 6. So at national level, you are registering in 5 entities. You are registering with the Bureau, with URSB, with the URA, with NSSF, with data protection. So why, if you've registered 5 times at national, why must you register at every other district then? And which is the normal practice. Businesses in this country, once you have a URSB certificate, you just go and work. The only thing is you'll need a license based on what you are doing. If you are doing radio, you'll need a license from UCC. If you are doing health, if you are doing a pharmacy, you'll need a license from the pharmaceuticals. Like that. Even if you are doing a kiosk, like that one, outside here, you'll need trading license from Nakawa. That's all. But if that kiosk is to be several of them, you don't need several licenses. Because they will assess you that Peter is doing a business. Let me give you a business I've seen. There are people who have businesses of Rolex stands. So he gets one license. And his Rolex stands are in Ntinda, in Nakawa, in Kisasi, in different trading centers. Just one license because it's the same business. It's one business, one person. Yeah. Then the other recommendation is on self-regulation. Then these are recommendations to the ministry to review regulations, to provide for clarity on how they conduct business, what is the quorum, how often do they meet, how do they arrive at their businesses, everything. Funding for sub-county and bureau and the SNMCs, though there is also an idea that SNMCs should stop. Then reducing paperwork, that's a bit of repeat. We have a short break. Just you need to participate in these processes. I think I have more recommendations. I need to get them. Just a moment. Like I told you, these are 2 papers, so the definitions, we've talked about it. Okay. The difference here is that in the policy, the additional recommendations, which were not in what I was projecting in the first paper, is to remove the RDCs and the OPM, which are in the policy and are not in the Act. Yes, so I want to, okay, MOU, I've already talked about them. Changing, of course, this one, I hadn't talked about it. Changing from Minister of Internal Affairs to Minister of Gender. I know it's a bit controversial, government is not interested in it. Even the NGO Bureau is not interested in it, but we should never stop pushing for it. Yes. So I know I've short the time, and I was recommending that we pick a cup of tea as we discuss. So I don't want to pause for the cup of tea because that would mean we are in a break. So I want people with questions to be asking as we note. As the others, you just stand quietly and pick a cup of tea. Pardon? Yeah, working. No, you see, sometimes when you say working tea, everyone walks to the serving point and they leave you alone. So to make sure no one is going to leave me alone, I'm saying, oh, side by side. Yeah. So the suggestion is that, so we are applying this thing of last is first. No, if we say everyone will go, they want last 5 minutes. Hmm? People stretch. Okay. Okay, 10 minutes. We have a timekeeper. Pardon?
We can use self-regulatory.
I'm dealing. In this country, we have to be militaristic to survive. Okay, so 10 minutes.